welcome back to the Counteract USA podcast. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. It's funny because I say welcome back, yet this is the first time you've ever heard anything from me. So that said, I believe some introductions are in order. My name is Grant May. By today's standards, I'm an alarmingly far-right young man, but if you were to rewind 30 years ago and look at the context of all of human history, I'm probably what is considered a normal human being who holds not very radical ideas. I'm a Bible-believing evangelical Christian. I would like to see a national revival because ultimately I love my country and I love my countrymen. One reason I'm excited to partner with Counteract is to help bring you this podcast, is that I believe Christians have a God-given duty to steward that which they were entrusted with. And for American Christians, part of that stewardship extends towards their country. This is the land that my ancestors fought for and died to protect. And one way I can honor them is by fighting to preserve and defend the nation that they sacrificed for. In a lot of ways, what we call America today resembles nothing that it used to. And now I'm getting off track, but this is a conversation for actually a later time. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the boogeyman of Project 2025 and the recent RNC platform that was released, and finally, the ramifications it might have on the election. If you've been keeping up with the election this year, you know there's a lot of trends to keep up with. At the debate, President Biden made an issue of something that probably many who are not entrenched in right-wing political circles know about, and that's Project 2025. Quick side note, after that debate, it was very interesting to watch the media's reaction to Joe Biden's performance. Some people have been saying for a long time that our president may not totally be there, and that maybe, just maybe, he was an empty suit for a conglomerate of progressive interest groups. Some had been saying this for a while, yet the media continued to run cover for him. I remember in the 2020 election when this was an issue, you would see President Trump go toe-to-toe with the media in some of the most combative interviews ever. And then they would cut to Joe Biden and ask him what his favorite ice cream flavor is. No, really. It's chocolate chip, by the way. Anywho, it seemed like after the debate, the media really turned on Joe as they suddenly realized that there was no way they could pull the mask over the public's eyes any longer. Multiple left-wing pundits and even elected Democrats began calling for Joe Biden to step down. The question at this point in my head became, why? Why the sudden change? Why, after spending 3 years of running cover for Joe Biden, has the media finally decided to be the defenders of democracy that they believe themselves to be and speak their truth to power? If you look at most of the attacks ran against Trump today, you will notice that they're either centered around one of two things. One, they're centered around the fact that he is a convicted felon, which makes it relatively easy to defend him, seeing as how he is the victim of Soviet-style lawfare attacks launched by George Soros-sponsored DAs across the country. The second attack, however, that they've really gone all in on in these last few days is that of Project 2025. If you look at the Twitter feed of Joe Biden or Biden-Harris HQ, it is clear that they are trying to make this Project 2025 a central issue to the election. Now, this obviously begs the question, what is Project 2025? Why do they believe it to be so dangerous? And why have pundits to celebrities like Mark Hamill, actor of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, to even this current administration, why are they making such a big deal about this Project 2025? Well, Project 2025 is a joint effort of over 100 conservative organizations and groups to help provide both policy recommendations and a resume bank in the opportunity that President Trump were to win the upcoming election. So Project 2025 is twofold. One, it's a project designed to help staff the administration with committed conservatives at every level of government as they weed out the fourth branch of government, the bureaucracy. But it is also a 900-page policy binder with recommendations of concrete ideas. In the foreword to this policy binder, which, by the way, is available to all of you if you just go online and Google either Project 2025 or Mandate for Leadership 2025. It's called the Mandate for Leadership 2025, but created by Project 2025. In the foreword to this, the president of the Heritage Foundation, which is really the conservative organization that headed this project up, the president of the Heritage Foundation, he articulates four defining values for this project. Number one is to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. Number two is to dismantle the administrative state and return the self-governance to the American people. Number three is to defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. And finally, number four is to secure our God-given individual rights and protect what he calls the blessings of liberty. The next 900 pages are spent giving actual policy descriptions on how to accomplish these goals. And herein why I think the left, and the media think this project is so scary. Project 2025 is a concrete, actionable, conservative vision for tomorrow, a vision that will hopefully help us restore the America that has been largely lost due to the current reigning forces of leftism, or perhaps more aptly described as pagan regressivism. If you look at both parties today, put aside the rhetoric, look where they actually stand on policies. You will realize that both parties actively sit to the left of where the Democrats were 20 years ago. There is this joke that the Republicans are just Democrats from 15 years ago, and ultimately there's truth in humor. If Bill Clinton of the 90s ran for office today, he would be resoundingly rejected by the modern configuration of Democrats and probably embraced by many Republicans. I mean, Bill Clinton ran a campaign centered on balancing the budget, which he did. Getting tough on crime. Guess what? Crime went down. But now these efforts are derided as racist. When he ran, he opposed gay marriage, and he wanted abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Newsflash, many Republicans today hold this exact same view. We have moved so far left as a country that Republicans are now in many instances pro-choice and Democrats are now pro-abortion. Granted, I'm no Bill Clinton apologist. I'm not a fan of his presidency, nor am I a fan of the man that he is. But I bring this up to illustrate that as a nation, we have moved collectively so far to the left that we wouldn't know a movement that was right-wing even if it hit us in the face. Part of the reason so much ire was drawn to Project 2025, I think, is because it has actual substance. It was not just empty rhetoric or opposing the current leftist position. No, it was concrete, solid conservative policy prescriptions that the presumptive president-elect would adopt early in his administration. Unfortunately, after receiving so much negative press, and this is actually funny, it was receiving a ton of negative press and continuing to make headlines. So I took to Twitter and said basically the correct conservative response to Project 2025 is not to try to explain our way out of it and say, well, 2025, it's not technically a Trump campaign or Trump didn't write it himself. Our correct response should be that these policies are epic and will help restore our country, because this is how you shift the Overton window back from being so far left. Well, I kid you not. It wasn't but 30 minutes later that President Trump took to Truth Social and essentially disavowed the project entirely. It means a lot. President Trump clearly listens to my opinion, my expert advice, but very unfortunate that he chose to ignore the advice as it stood. You really hate to see it. Which moves us, I guess, into the second thing I wanted to talk about today, and really goes hand in hand with the first thing. And that is, drumroll please, well, the RNC, they released their policy platform heading into this election. A lot to talk about here, and honestly, there were a lot of very good things contained in this platform, most notably the curbing of illegal immigration and beginning of some deportations for the over 8 million illegal immigrants which came over here in the last 3 years alone. Unfortunately, however, one thing I really didn't like was there was no mention of any social conservatism except for protecting girls' sports from boys who like to pretend to be girls. No mention of abortion, something that has been included in the platform since I believe 1984, and no mention of defending traditional marriage. It's funny. It's like they decide to expressly call out saving girls' sports from boys pretending to be girls to get trophies, but there is absolutely zero mention of anything that led to this point. Do they think boys just woke up one day and decided that they should put on makeup and hop in the pool with girls? No. History is cyclical. And as much as we like to pretend that it isn't, slippery slopes are very real. The thing is, social issues are becoming winning issues for conservatives. The LGBT movement has notably pushed way too far that so many have started to realize it's not just about two consenting adults doing whatever they want in the privacy of their own bedroom. No. The pride parades, the public school sexual indoctrination have clued many people in. This is a nationwide blitzkrieg against our children and the future of this country, predicated on lies told by evil people seeking to capitalize on our culture of confusion. Now would be the time to lean into some of these issues, not to abandon them altogether. Like I was talking about earlier, this is how the Overton window shifted further left. The right tries to appeal to the middle, yet as the left moves further and further left, so does the middle. So, in instance, what you have is the right appealing to this middle that has moved so far left that they're further left than the Democrats were 20 years ago. Without anchoring our movement, the conservative movement in 2030, Republicans will merely be trying to explain how Democrats are the real transphobes. I want Donald Trump to be a visionary leader. He has the energy, the charisma to energize a political movement. As he stands right now, he is pretty similar to any 90s Democrat, which would make sense since he was, in fact, a Democrat in the 1990s. I know this sounds like I'm coming out hard against President Trump. I want it to be clear I still plan on voting for him and supporting him. He wasn't that radical. In his first term, I wish he helped to correct the Overton window. But he was so much better than what we have currently and the two guys we had before him. At some point, though, we must have a leader who can excite and energize the base, but be committed to radical ideas that will sound revolutionary, but will actually just be a return to traditional right-wing American politics. It is hard for me to see committed conservatives plan on boycotting the election for some of the aforementioned reasons. A lot of times they fail to recognize that in any lesser of two evil situations, there will always be a greater good. Someone I really admire and enjoy reading on Twitter, his name's Josh Dawes. He used an excellent illustration that's really stuck with me when discussing this topic. He talked about imagining that you are on a cruise ship and the captain comes on over the intercom and says there will be a vote over what music is played over all the speakers during the duration of the cruise. One option toes the line of Cardi B's WAP and other trashy artists and music like Ice Spice or Sexy Red, while the other music option is uplifting music from a former Christian who previously publicly walked away from the faith. What music would you vote for? You're welcome to abstain from voting, but in doing so, you're not only inherently penalizing the one you would vote for, but also helping the other who you would vote against. Voting is much the same way for a president. Romans 13 talks about how governments and civil magistrates are elected by God for specific purposes. Many American Christians are either unfamiliar with this passage or they misunderstand the proscriptive effect it should have on them. Here in the United States, we operate in a democratic republic, meaning we elect our leaders. Who is the governing authority in the United States? Is it the president? No. To a small extent it is, but the founding fathers carefully crafted our system to ensure that the president was ultimately accountable to a higher authority. The preamble to the Constitution clearly and explicitly lay out just who is the authority that God has entrusted political power to, and it is we the people. We the people are accountable to God for stewarding our political authority, just as the servants entrusted with talents were accountable to the master. Not to vote is to vote. Not to speak is to speak. In the short term, I believe it's imperative that Christians seek ways to influence whoever will be in charge of policy in the United States. Looking at the two candidates, which candidate has made themselves out to not be openly animus to the values of Bible-believing Christians in the United States? To me, the answer is obvious. Long term, however, there needs to be a resurrection of the moral majority that we once enjoyed in the 1980s. That cannot happen without individual churches and individual Christians leveraging their beliefs and opinions in public. Making things like abortion, which is ultimately a ritualistic form of pagan sacrifice, unthinkable, by making it so barbaric to the population that politicians, at least on the right, are terrified to support such a thing and predicated their campaigns on stamping it out. This is how we shift back the Overton window, and this is ultimately how we win back the country.